Here is a question to behold. Have we imagined our entire lives? Well, let's start with the William Blake quote. The tree which moves some to tears of joy is, in the eyes of others, a mere green thing that stands in the way. Some see nature all deformity and ridicule, and some scarce see nature at all. But to the eyes of imagination, nature is imagination itself. Whoa. Okay, that last sentence is interesting. Is nature imagination itself? Well, what is imagination? Well, let's take a look at the cranium. Let's take a look at the human head. If we see something through these two eyes on the front of our head, we say it's absolutely real. There is no imagination involved. It's like I'm looking at a chair, I'm looking at a plant, now I'm looking at the sky. Those things are objectively out there. That's the way it is. No imagination required. However, if you go to sleep and you see things by way of your third eye, the pineal gland, which has rods and cones, just like these two eyes, except they're inverted, and there lies the truth, right? Or there lies the secret. As Carl Jung said, those who look outside dream, those who look inside awaken. But let's just follow this through then, because seemingly everything that we look at, for our daily lives, we're walking along the road, we're going to the park, we're playing some squash, we're going to school, whatever it is, we're looking at other human beings, we feel that those things are objectively out there, right? And this is indeed the manifest world, right? So we've got effectively this sort of cascading waterfall or flow of consciousness or awareness, this flow of imagination emanating from and pouring from the mind of God, which is the universe, higher sort of vibrational spiritual realms, like the Atman, if you want to think of theosophy and sort of ancient Hindi texts like the Upanishads, etc. But we effectively have this sort of process by way of manifestation. So things are trickling down, beginning with a very expedient, accelerated vibratory nature. And then, as they trickle down, they become slower and slower and slower. And then we begin to understand what Albert Einstein was saying when he said that, nature or reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. So we are actually composed of these lower vibratory atoms, and we are on this lower vibratory physical plane, if you might want to think of it as that, also known as the Sthula Sharara, again referring to the theosophical text through people like Madame Blavatsky. And so, it's interesting because when you take a psychedelic, somehow this seemingly fixed, objective, externalized world where there's just us, the subject, and outside there's this sort of like infinite, objective, Cartesian XYZ reality, is sort of like dissolved simply through the elevation of the vibrations of your body by way of the LSD or the DMT or ayahuasca or whatever substance you've taken. So how can that be? If this reality around us is not being imagined, if it is fundamentally there, then how can it be that you just simply change your perception and everything that's seemingly outside yourself is fundamentally changed? So, what I feel is true is that ultimately we are imagining this, but it's just that our body is bestowing this kind of very fixed, externalized nature and duping us into thinking that actually we're living in this world, we're not actually the world itself, or that we're living in physical reality, whereas actually physical reality is something that exists within us being the omnipotent, omniscient mind of God itself. Because remember, there is no separation. When we look at people, when we look at things, we're effectively looking at shapes, colors, textures, tones. All of these are fundamentally subjective and based on the observer. The human lens sees red as what we think of as red, but another animal, another creature will see it fundamentally differently. So how can that be? It's because this body is actually the highest form of technology on the planet, and it allows us to experience this sort of forgetting, if you will, and this very restricted state of being in which we effectively have archived our thoughts and feelings and actions, and it's a very good learning school for us to participate in at this time, because spiritually it just allows us a lot of growth and evolution. And so once we're in these states, we're remembering our daily activities, and we're somewhat ruing on them, and we are apprehensive for the future, and we're constantly casting our minds back and forth, and it becomes sometimes quite torturous. But this, I feel, is the ultimate lesson of the physical experience, is for us to actually kind of like a catapult to sling ourselves back into these lower vibratory planes, to be subject to our will and indeed the will of others, and to grow in a more loving, compassionate way and a more understanding as we get thrown back into the light. But But you know, the imagination itself seemingly is unavoidable. It's everywhere. It's everything. And if we eliminate the language that we've created and all these human constructs that act sort of as placeholders from us seeing the truth, that actually we're looking at this sort of amorphic, very much transient reality that is very much contingent upon who's looking. We can begin to see that indeed we are imagining our lives as we go forwards. Like, where is our history? Where is our past right now? It lives only in the mind. But simultaneously, if we conceive of something that has yet to pass in our waking life, we could say that to not exist. But the more you raise your consciousness, the more you become in touch with these higher planes in the lucid state. And the more, indeed, if you do this kind of illicitly through LSD and various different substances, you can begin to see that actually that which we call imaginary is fundamentally as real in those moments as our daily waking state of consciousness. So when you know you're dreaming, you're awake within the dream and you begin to see what's really being said and what we're really being taught, if not sort of very secretively, by way of films like Inception, Truman Show, The Matrix, and Solaris, various metaphysical films, that we live in this sort of cascading ladder of consciousness from which imagination pours, and we're sort of down here somewhere, and we still, of course, have touch. We're still in touch with the imagination and the inspiration of this kind of gateway, where the more you become inspired, the more imagination you are granted, and you have a much better, stronger connection or dialogue with your higher self, and you become a lot more creative in your life. So this is effectively what I feel is the true nature of reality. Behind the scenes is that varying degrees of vibration, and we can get into the Hermetic principles in the future, which sort of like, when you begin to realize that there's a whole school of thought behind this, and there's a whole infrastructure and architecture behind reality. Labels aside, the true nature of reality is effectively vibration, and the mind is omniscient. All is mind, the universe is mental, being the first Hermetic principle. So there are many different ways and traditions through which we can experience and learn more about this mechanistic nature of reality, and we'll be delving into those in future videos. But for now, just all there's to say is, do visit newearth.land to learn about how we can actually raise human consciousness, and for people to become aware of this so that we can join a movement of true liberation, freedom, abundance for all by way of eliminating rent and bills from society. We can do that by making shelter, energy, food and water, those things, basic human rights. If that sounds like something you're interested in, do check out newearth.land, and I'll be in touch with you again super soon with the next video, where we might be talking about Kabbalah or Freemasonry or one of these traditions that are speaking really to the same sort of underlying mechanistic nature of reality, which is that, as William Blake said, to the eyes of imagination, nature is imagination itself. Spirit is invisible nature. Nature is visible spirit. Okay, namaste. See you in the next video.